Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're unlocking some secrets hidden right there in your hands. Specifically, we're zooming in on the lifeline.
Yeah, it's a fascinating line. We pulled together some insights on how this major line works.
Right, and how it connects with those areas around your thumb and the side of your palm, the Mount of Venus and Mount of Mars.
Exactly. We're looking at what they might tell you about, your vitality, maybe how long you might live, potentially.
And bigger life things too, right? Like general health, handling stress, maybe even times of opposition.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
It's one of the three major lines, after all.
Hmm.
Okay, let's get into it.
So the lifeline, that curve around the thumb base, it circles the Mount of Venus.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
And think of the Mount of Venus as like your personal powerhouse. It's tied to passion, creativity.
Relationships, energy levels, that sort of
Spot
stuff.
on. Your core energy reserves. And right nearby, you've got the Mount of Mars.
Okay, and Mars is more about drive, assertiveness.
Physical strength, stamina, that competitive spirit, determination. It's your inner spark plug, really. Jupiter's more the main leadership mount, but Mars definitely adds that fire.
So when we look just at the lifeline itself, what's considered like ideal?
Well, ideally, you want a line that's straightforward, deep, clear, not too many unnecessary wavy bits or branches heading down.
Okay, so simple is good, suggests vitality, resilience.
Generally, yes. Better bounce back. And it's interesting, that simplicity thing often holds true for the headline and heartline, too. Cleaner lines can mean, more focus, better handling of stress.
Right. We have an example that shows this, don't we? Mary Millen.
Absolutely. Her hand is a great starting point. First thing you notice, a really well-developed Mount of Venus. Very full.
So linking back, that suggests beauty, grace, and crucially for a singer, lots of energy, stamina, vitality.
Exactly. And look at the lines on her palm. They're described as minimal. It's almost like a really efficient system, not wasting energy.
Which contrasts with something else we found about crisscrossing lines on Venus.
Oh, yeah. If you see a lot of little crisscross lines all over the Mount of Venus, the thinking is it might suggest scattered energy, maybe misused energy, getting into too many things.
Makes you think, doesn't it? How many of us could be more focused with our energy?
It's a great question about energy management, really. Not just how much fuel, but how you're using it. Now, shifting focus a bit, we have a second hand. Some really unique stuff going on there, especially with the headline and lifeline.
Yeah, this one stood out. There's a specific mark on the headline, an island shape, and it's under the Mount of Saturn.
That's right. The Mount of Saturn is at the base of the middle finger, often linked to discipline, responsibility, sometimes seriousness, maybe even melancholy.
So an island there. What's the traditional take on that?
Well, an island on the headline, right there, can suggest a period of mental isolation, maybe even tendencies towards depression. And interestingly, it's often linked to stomach issues, too.
Stomach issues, that's specific. There's even a suggested time frame.
Yeah, the interpretation often puts this potential rough patch somewhere between, say, 30 and 36 or 37 years old.
Wow. And they figure that out using the money line and where it crosses the headline.
Exactly, which is a whole other fascinating area we could explore sometime. But back to this hand, what about the lifeline? It has its own story. It does. It apparently improves after a bit of a shaky start around age 22. But what's really interesting is another line running inside the lifeline.
Inside, what's that called?
It's known as the line of Mars, or sometimes the guardian angel line in Western palmistry. Think of it like built-in backup.
A guardian angel line. I like that. So it offers protection.
Yeah, protection from poor health, maybe other challenges to physical illness, other kinds of enemies or adversity.
And a long one is better. Gives protection for longer.
Exactly. And it's noted as being pretty rare, actually, which makes it quite significant when you see it.
Okay. This hand also mentions the area of Mars negative. Where's that, and why are horizontal lines there seen as negative?
Right, Mars negative is basically at the lower part of the palm, below that fleshy Mount of Mars on the side. Imagine a line across underneath it. Horizontal lines touching the main lines, head, heart, life in that area, are usually seen as obstacles or negative influences.
Right, but that line of Mars we just talked about, the guardian angel line, can help.
It can. A strong line of Mars can sort of counteract those negative horizontal lines, like it focuses that Martian energy protectively. It's also an area linked to stomach issues, maybe because it's seen as a concentration point for body heat or energy. Lots of lines there might show a tendency.
So the inner line of Mars acts like a shield, almost, like a good defense system. Okay, let's switch again. Another singer, Danny Momino. Sounds like a different picture from Mary Millen.
Yes, quite a contrast. Danny Momino's lifeline is described as less clear, with small island formations along it.
And islands generally aren't great, right? Potential health issues, lower energy.
That's the usual interpretation, yeah.
Yeah.
Periods where vitality might dip.
But interestingly, she also has a line of Mars, so still some protection there.
Apparently so. It really does seem like that line of Mars can be a key protective factor, even when other lines aren't perfect.
What else stood out on her hand?
Well, quite a few horizontal lines. These are often called lines of opposition. They can suggest challenges, obstacles, and again, potentially link back to stomach issues or other health concerns.
It feels like multiple signs pointing in a similar direction sometimes.
It often happens that way, yeah.
And it's not just the lifeline for health, is it? The heart line's important too.
Oh, definitely. The heart line running across the upper palm isn't just about physical heart health. It's also about emotional well-being, how you handle stress.
And Danny Milano's heart line was described how?
Unclear, islanded, and branched. Very different from Mary Millen's simple, clear one. Plus, Danny Milano's is longer, which can sometimes indicate higher emotional sensitivity, reacting more strongly, maybe.
So a simpler heart line might mean more emotional stability, better stress coping, while a complex one might mean deeper feelings, but maybe more vulnerability.
That's often the interpretation, yeah. It really shows how you need to look at everything, every line, every mount, to get the full health picture. And her area of Mars negative was also described as disturbed.
Right, suggesting maybe issues managing that assertiveness or drive could impact health or conflict handling?
Could do. And another thing noted were branches coming off her lifeline, heading outwards towards the Mount of Moon.
Okay, the Mount of Moon is opposite the thumb, linked to imagination, travel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And subconscious feelings. So branches heading that way can suggest restlessness, a desire to travel, maybe even some unease in new places.
Could it mean other things too, like a shift in perspective or energy outflow?
It can be read that way too. A change in how you see life, or potentially an outflow of vitality, even money.
So the basic principle is lines joining the lifeline are generally good, like an energy boost.
Pretty much. An influx of energy or good qualities. Like we said, a line joining from Jupiter, base of the index finger, that's often seen as honor coming your way.
And lines leaving the lifeline are less good, an outflow.
Generally, yeah. Outflow of energy, stamina, health, maybe finances, sometimes specifically linked to issues below the stomach, kidneys, urinary tract, that sort of area.
Like a river losing water through side channels. It's clear these interpretations need context, though. What's good for a singer's restless energy might not suit someone else.
Absolutely crucial point. Palmistry isn't rigid rules. It's about potential tendencies, strengths within your life context. Now let's shift again. Mount of Venus, grace, beauty, thinking about actresses. We've got Angelina Jolie, Elton John.
Right, because there's this common idea, isn't there, that actresses must have a strong Venus mount for that screen presence, that beauty, but maybe it's not quite that simple.
Doesn't seem to be.
Yeah.
If you compare Angelina Jolie's hand, described as not having a particularly strong or defined Venus mount, with Elton John's, which is very well developed, padded, it challenges that direct link.
So while a padded Venus is generally linked to grace, you can clearly succeed without a massive one, even when grace is valued.
Looks like it. Makes you wonder how much is perception, media image, versus the hand itself,
That's a really interesting thought. The power of image versus maybe innate qualities. So if a big Venus mount isn't essential for perceived grace, what does it strongly signify?
Well, it's often linked to enduring desires, a kind of youthful energy that can last, even in older age. Elton John's hand, with those well-padded fingers and mounts overall, suggests a richness beyond just money.
Like a love of life, food, maybe complexly, sexuality, love.
Exactly. A real zest, deep passions. Specifically, a prominent Venus mount often suggests density, meaning energy reserves. Warmth in the hand can indicate optimism, engagement, stamina, vitality, obviously.
Good taste, too. Food, clothes, art, and genuine beauty.
Those are traditionally associated qualities, yes, and inner radiance.
Which contrasts with Nicole Kidman's hand, described as thinner, less prominent Venus.
Right, which might suggest that maybe inherent, easily expressed warmth isn't her default setting, perhaps something she needs to consciously project, especially professionally.
But you have to look at the whole hand, right?
Absolutely. Her tapering thumb is noted as indicating perfectionism. Success comes from many factors working together, not just one mount. And good company, supportive environment that matters too.
Definitely. It's complex, isn't it? Not just one sign. Okay, let's move to Barack Obama's hand. What's the main feature there?
The big thing mentioned is a wide gap between his lifeline and headline starting point.
Wide gap. What does that suggest?
Often interpreted as quite rash, outgoing, opportunistic, someone who might act first, think later, jump on chances.
But there are balancing factors.
Yes, the presence of a supporting line, that line of Mars again, and a reasonably well-padded mount of Venus without bad markings, suggests good underlying vitality and some protective energy.
So decisiveness, maybe impulsiveness, but backed by energy and some resilience. Got it. Next up, Sachin Tendulkar focuses on the lifeline shape.
Exactly. His forms a reasonably good, large semicircle. And generally, a bigger semicircle enclosing more of Venus and Mars is seen as better.
Way bigger, more energy.
That's the idea. It suggests greater energy reserves, more inner drive, capturing more of that Venusian energy and Martian fire, if you like.
Makes sense. A smaller arc might mean less of that inner spark. And how does this tie into success?
Well, a prominent padded Venus mount, plus a lifeline that's either unbroken or forms a big semicircle, even if breaking but overlapping well, those are positive signs for success potential.
But there are caveats, things to watch out for.
Always. You need to check for too many crisscrossing lines on Venus that's wasted energy, or lots of negative marks in Mars, negative mismanaged anger or health issues. You need the whole picture for a proper assessment.
So you can have the engine, but need to make sure it's running efficiently and not leaking oil, basically.
Okay, Shah Rukh Khan's hand. Interesting lifeline feature here, too.
Yes, his lifeline is noted as broken around age 35, but crucially, there's an overlapping line that continues it.
An overlap, is that good or bad?
Often considered positive, actually, even if not always in the old books. It can suggest an increase in energy, more fire, often coincides with periods of major success. Like the energy path gets a boost or reinforcement, and the direction it overlaps in matters.
It can give more clues, yes. If the overlap trends towards Saturn base of the middle finger, it might point to increased wealth. Towards Jupiter base of the index finger suggests gains in position, honor, respect, maybe even spirituality.
Fascinating. Like the energy boost is directed somewhere specific. Okay, Tom Cruise. What's the key thing on his hand?
The headline and lifeline are joined at the very start, but only for a short bit.
Joined, but short, meaning?
Often read as someone who's just in time, maybe operates close to deadlines, things work out at the last minute, a certain timing knack.
And his Venus mount.
Described as reasonably good. Suggests high energy, good stamina. Seems to fit, doesn't it?
It does. It's just in time for those action sequences, maybe. Okay, now a South Indian politician's hand sounds quite positive overall.
Yes, described as having a perfect lifeline, very prominent and padded mount of Venus. So, high desires, lots of vitality.
And despite some past controversies mentioned, the hand quality offered resilience.
That's the suggestion. Specifically, a small line joining the lifeline from the mount of Jupiter is highlighted.
Joining from Jupiter, we say that means honor.
Exactly. A line like that suggests a life likely to reach high position, honor, respect. And crucially, that status tends to hold up, even through difficulties. A clear Jupiter connection is powerful for maintaining reputation.
So Jupiter acts like a reputational shield. And that prominent Venus mount probably helps in politics too.
Oh, absolutely. Strong desires, grace, beauty, warmth, relationship focus, ability to energize others. That genuine warmth can be a huge asset in connecting with voters, winning elections.
That charismatic pull. Okay, next hand. Some small lines pointing towards Saturn.
Yes, towards the base of the middle finger. These are often seen as luck lines or fate lines influencing finances. Even small lines joining the lifeline from Saturn's area can suggest a financial boost at that life stage.
And these ones seem to be later in life, around 60, 65.
That was the estimate, yeah. Minor outward lines very late are usually dismissed.
So opportunities can still arise later on. And there was a mention of a small overlapping lifeline again.
Yes, also generally seen as positive. A little boost. This contrasts with a lifeline curving clearly outwards towards the mount of Moon.
Right, and that outward curve towards the moon suggests...
Could be moving away from family, maybe even abroad, or just a strong pull towards water. Also traditionally linked to potential prostate or kidney issues.
So direction matters for life path and health. Some rarer things were mentioned too, like multiple lines joining, exiting, or triangles.
Briefly, yeah. 2 joining, 1 exiting simultaneously is unusual. Triangles on the lifeline can sometimes mean property, but if Mars negative is very messy, enjoying that property might be difficult.
Again, context is everything. Even good signs need checking against the rest. Now, a lady's hand with excellent Jupiter lines.
Yes, very clear, strong Jupiter lines joining the lifeline. Strong indicator of high social standing via marriage and huge potential for success in public service, administration, politics, if she chose that path. High probability.
Really powerful signs for leadership and status. Next, Sonia Gandhi's hand. A prominent line of Mars again.
Yes, a very beautiful, clear line of Mars inside the lifeline, seen as giving inner fire, fighting spirit, protection, especially noted regarding her children, strong resilience.
But also an island towards the end of her lifeline. Potential health issue later.
That's the suggestion, yeah. An island forming later, maybe after 75 in her case, can point to later life health concerns. But again, balanced somewhat by that long, protective line of Mars.
So a potential vulnerability shielded by inner strength. How do islands progress again?
They usually start small, beginning of an issue, widen period of maximum impact, then taper, suggesting resolution. Though with age, resolution might not mean complete disappearance of a health issue. A simple, unbroken lifeline is still generally best.
Which leads to wavy or crisscross lines, especially early on.
Yeah, if the lifeline and headline start out looking messy, wavy, crisscrossed, it can suggest a more troubled early life, physically or mentally. Contrast that with simple, deep, clear lines in youth that suggests a good foundation for later health. Good early lines make good later health more likely.
So the start sets a pattern. What about underlapping lifelines? That sounds different.
Underlapping is where a new line emerges from under the original and takes over. Generally seen as negative. It reduces the Venus mount area, signifying diminishing energy and desires with age. Can make aging seem more pronounced.
And potentially linked to depression risk, especially if Venus wasn't strong to start.
That's a possible connection, yes. It's like the life force is fading a bit.
Contrasting with a strong Venus mount, which means
high desires, energy, usually an upbeat nature, helps counteract negative signs. Though even with good Venus, negative horizontal lines, if they don't touch the lifeline, can still mean wasted energy. But a decent line of Mars can still protect.
And a big lifeline semicircle plus a good Mars line.
That combination often suggests very high desires, tireless energy. Really boosts the probability of success.
It's all such an intricate balance. Okay, shifting slightly, mind line, headline, and heart line related to health.
Definitely. A disturbed headline, especially under Saturn, can suggest ongoing mental struggles. Islands on a heart line point to emotional or relationship difficulties, which impacts overall well-being.
But again, that line of Mars can help buffer these.
It's consistently seen as a major protective factor, yes. Gives resilience.
Okay. There was also a mention of a rare hand where head and lifeline are joined for a long time.
Yeah, joined for quite a stretch at the start, often indicates a more cautious nature, maybe shy, hardworking, thoughtful, contemplative. Can sometimes be tricky to distinguish from the money line in those cases.
And if the lifeline then becomes short and delicate towards the end?
Can suggest needing extra care with health in later life. Generally, any unclear or poorly defined lines can hint at potential health concerns, even if longevity isn't necessarily shortened.
And outward lines again in this context.
Could suggest minor health issues cropping up later on, yeah.
What about hands with troubled early lines, but then a beautiful Jupiter line joins later?
That's a hopeful sign. Despite maybe a rough start health-wise or otherwise, a strong Jupiter line joining later suggests real potential for upliftment, high achievement. But the early health likely wasn't great.
So success is possible, but underscores the need to manage health. Health is wealth.
Exactly. And it circles back to unclear, islanded lifelines being assigned to really prioritize health.
It's important, though, isn't it, not to be too rigid. Some people with imperfect lifelines excel physically.
Absolutely crucial. Avoid dogmatic interpretations. Analyze carefully, empathetically. How you phrase things in palmistry matters a lot. Aim for positive framing.
Definitely. Okay, wrapping up. Age estimation on the lifeline.
Yeah.
And the little finger?
Age on the lifeline is approximate markers, maybe for 5, 10, 20 years, etc., up to maybe 90 or 100. Not precise science. The Mercury finger, the little finger, normal length is sometimes linked to average lifespan. Shorter might traditionally hint at shorter, but you'd be very cautious saying that. Better to focus on communication style or other Mercury traits.
Right. Handle with care and sensitivity. And finally, the feel of the hand. Hard versus soft.
Yeah, another layer. Hard hands often suggest hardworking, maybe less overtly sensitive. Soft hands indicate more sensitivity, maybe aptitude for delicate work, sensory stuff. It all adds to the picture. You need to consider multiple factors for any real insight.
Wow. We have covered so much ground today, really diving deep into the lifeline and all its connections. It's clear it's not simple, is it? Very multifaceted.
It really is. And the key takeaway, I think, is that this gives you a framework. Potential tendencies, influences, It's not about fixed predictions.
And hopefully for you listening, it prompts a look at your own hands. Maybe some of these patterns resonate, might spark some self-reflection.
Yeah, and that brings us to a final thought for you to maybe ponder. Thinking about that interplay, the lifeline, your Venus mount energy, your Martian drive, what aspects of your own vitality and fire stand out? And how could understanding that maybe help you navigate your own journey?
Definitely something to think about. And maybe we can explore other lines or mounts in future deep dives if this sparked your interest. Thanks so much for joining us on the deep dive.